and tell them the only way to go now is to embrace green technology. So as leaders, I think it is our responsibility to do that. Then also, I would want to call upon the big companies, the established companies can also come in to help the small ones so that they are able also to embrace the technology.
Digitalization support the development of sustainable multi-modal corridors in East Africa.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie Mumbo. I'm the project manager, East Africa for Smart Freight Center. And to your question, so when you think about digitization, I mean, simply put, you can't measure what you don't see. So digitization, simply put, is having the numbers at the touch of your hands. You have all this software that most of these companies actually do have. You have platforms that are already integrated to the commonplace softwares that they already use. So digitization is important because it provides you with that critical visibility on this different information that is crucial to monitoring your performance, your efficiency, and being accountable for everything within your operations. How that links to the data side of this is that, I'll give an example. In India, we have a structure that is called the Data Partnerships Program, which is a pilot activity that we're running with transporters in India. And how this came about is because we had data from one of the transporters on that end, and this data led us into coming up with the business model for this company. All the data that we use when we're calculating your emissions is in the data of your operations running. With that information, you can calculate your emissions and use that data to communicate not only to your external partners, but also to funders and other organizations when it comes to carbon accounting as well, because I mean, reduction in emissions is the biggest conversation now, and you will need your emissions information to do so. There's plenty of other case studies I can share, but I'll stop at that.
Thank you, Katie. Now, we are all aware that Smart Freight Center actually promulgates sensor-based real-time.
In Asia and in Europe, we're seeing the digitization rate and that standardization of this data is, I would put it at roughly 60% because they're more advanced when it comes to the software and the systems. And when we talk about digitization, it's not just getting a bunch of tools and systems and putting them together. We have to think about the interconnectivity between all these tools and resources. Your onboard telematics, how does that feed into your existing softwares that you're using internally? So it's not just telling people, go buy software or get a certain equipment, but look at what you have at the moment and how does that integrate to all these other softwares, and how can that lead you to reductions in costs for other areas. So that's one. And interestingly enough, the GLEC framework is based on ISO 14083. The ISO has been integrated to a lot of the softwares that are being used. So that is part of, I think SAP is based on the GLEC framework, the carbon accounting tool in SAP, and several other tools also have that integration to it that help you calculate that sustainability aspect of it and calculate your emissions as well.
Thank you, Katie. Now, are there any pilot projects or best practices from other regions that East Africa can actually learn from when it comes to digital green freight management? In particular, any particular country or region that East African country can actually emulate the successes?
Yes, so in China, we just wrapped up creating emission factors, which is sort of a calculation that helps you calculate your emissions, and we're actually embarking on a journey to creating emission factors for Eastern Africa together with the Kuna Foundation, Central Corridor, and other organizations in this space. So we're in the process of collecting that data, which is why it's more important to have data in a soft copy than having it on hard paper, because then it becomes easier to aggregate this information. And so we're learning from the practices in China. How was the data collected? What was the system used so that we can come up with factors for East Africa? Also the model in India where we had the data partnerships based on the emissions accounting work. We're doing similar work in East Africa, working with transporters and shippers in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as well, collecting data to help them rethink how the business models are structured. Are there possibilities for route optimization? Are there opportunities for model shifts? So that data and having conversations with the associations and organizations, as well as the companies in this space, is helping us now structure that as well. And lastly, we, together in a partnership with CalStat, which is focusing on zero-emission tracking, so corridors, green corridors in the US, Europe, and Asia. We're looking at how can we bring that model here, and very soon we'll actually be doing a zero-emission pilot in East Africa. So that is something that we're working on at the moment together with the Kuna Foundation.
Interesting. So at least we have several best practices around the world where East
Several
Africa
best practices and several pilots coming up.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now I shall swing to the right, Mr. Abdullah. I'd like to hear from LETRA's perspective on your regulatory perspective. What policy interventions are needed to support the transition to a more sustainable and resilient logistics network in Tanzania and the broader region in East Africa?
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced before, my name is Abdallah Mhagama. I work with LATRA, Land Transport Regulatory Authority. We oversee in terms of creating a level playing field in the transport modes of railway, roads, and cable transport, passenger services, as well as freight. As far as I'm concerned today, I'm going to talk about mostly on the freight side. We've made some major steps in the passenger services, organizing the market. These are one of the things that we've been doing, and we think these are the things that should be sustainable in the future. Currently, most operators are small and medium. Over 85% are sole proprietors, owning a small fleet size. So we are trying, we are working hard, and we've made some progress in the passenger services, the buses, convincing them to organize together into collective companies.
Perhaps you'd like to speak a little louder. I think some audience indicated it's a little bit soft. Yeah.
The first step we are making is organizing the market. Organizing the market, pooling together resources, convincing operators that they can work together, forming companies instead of owning a fleet from home. It's been working, and we think it has the advantages of economies of scale, reduction in costs, and all. We should be able, as a regulatory authority, to introduce innovations such as digitization, such as use of clean energy, when operators or transporters are organized in groups, cooperatives, and or companies. We are also working on, and I think it's a globally, and we are also practicing it, standardizations of processes, standardization of regulatory principles across East Africa and across SADC and Commerce as well. We are an active partner in that aspect. We know that as a freight forwarding, you work with international across borders, and currently there are some issues which are not harmonized. We've made progress in the axle load control in the East Africa community, and we are doing the same, working with SADC, standardization of railway standards. Currently, we don't have one for SADC. We don't have one for East Africa community. Recently, we were part of the SADC meeting in Harare, in Zimbabwe, where we chatted way forward about things to harmonize in the railway sector. And luckily, the SADC committee, standing committee, or the chapter on railway have agreed to adopt the standard gauge railway of Tanzania as a model standard for SADC, and that's going to be deliberated next year. The meeting is going to happen in Mauritius. We are proud of that. We've been working hard also So when we have standards of what kind of railway systems we all adopt, it will be easy for the countries to have seamless movement of cargo using the railway mode. And as we know, railway mode is considered green mode because of its saving. As you may know, in Tanzania, our SGR system is electrified. And so if these standards are adopted, we are looking forward to have electric train systems across SADC, and we are also talking with East Africa community to have it so that we can have in future a model shift from the road to the railway. And along with that, we've been working with the government, the Ministry of Transport. In 2024, the minister enacted regulations for the private sector participation in the railway services. Currently, as we speak, someone can buy a stake in the railway sector as a private sector. You can have your own wagon, you can have your own locomotives operated along TRC. That will see that there's participation of the private sector in the railway system and a gradual move from the road to the railway systems. For all the benefits of the railway system as electrified, it's also economies of scale, so it has all the advantages of safety and environment. This is where we are pushing. We are also pushing, so that is a public-private partnership. We are also pushing for digitization. We've done very well in the passenger services so far. One can book from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma by SGR using the same framework, and book from Dodoma going to the mainland, to the lake zone. When it's complete, the construction is still ongoing, but the systems in terms of digitization are already in there, so that will create multimodal connection, and we are looking forward to the same in the freight sector, where first mile and last mile will be served by the road, and then the entire fleet can be served by the railway system. But another thing, last but not least, as an example, we are also talking with the transport associations. We've noticed and we've learned there are challenges in terms of we are forgetting drivers. Whenever we discuss about logistics or we discuss about freight, we talk about transporters, we talk about CFAs, but we are forgetting the drivers, who are the last player in the game. There are issues. There are issues with their attitudes. There are issues with their knowledge about Incoterms and all these kind of things. So we are talking with transporters, having to organize a system where drivers can be held accountable for the work they do, for the cargo they carry across the borders and everywhere. We have a number of complaints regarding mishandled containers. We have abandoned freight. Some transporters are opting out to register their companies outside Tanzania because of the conduct of the drivers. So we are working with the transporters, having to organize the drivers into a system, a digital system where we can know their whereabouts, where we can give them a credit rating system as they misbehave, because this is not just about jobs, this is not about the transporters. All of that is beautiful, but it's also about the image of the country, the image of the economy. The drivers are the people who drive the economy. They drive the vehicles, they carry these freight across borders, but we have not been taking good care of issues that have to make them accountable, but on the other hand also to make them enjoy the fruits of their labor. So we are working with the transporters. We've talked with Tatoa, our partner. We've talked with TAT. We've talked with Tamstoa, and they are all willing. We are embarking on this ambitious project into having a system where we can know where all of them are and how they are doing, and that they cannot misbehave from this company and get a job in another company and misbehave the same. With that, few case studies. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. Now, we all know that regulators' perspectives is always critical for policy actions. Policy actions can either catalyze a change or inhibit changes, depending on how it's being designed. Now, I'd like to know, is there any carbon pricing mechanism for the promotion of green incentives for logistics operators so far? Is there any carbon pricing mechanism introduced?
Not yet, not yet, no.
In the whole region or just Tanzania?
We are embarking on a strategic, a sustainable practices strategy coming next year. We've just concluded our 5 years. We've been in the industry for 5 years only. Previously, we used to be Sumatra, of course, but we were enacted in 2019, and we've been doing things with no consideration for carbon pricing. But recently, we've been thinking, and we've been working on enacting a strategy for sustainable practices coming 2025. From July 2025, where we will adapt any of these elements of carbon emission or carbon testing, carbon pricing, whichever will be feasible, as much as we discuss with our stakeholders and the approach that they will see it feasible.
Thank you. Another question for you, Mr. Abdullah, is there any mandate to have a gradual fleet renewal up to Euro 5 standards for the road transport? How many % of the industry operators are using Euro 5 now? Is there any mandate for that?
No, we have not adopted that. We have not adopted the Euro 5 strategy for the carbon emission yet. Like I said, this is probably going to be one of the considerations coming to our sustainable practice strategy to be launched in July 2025.
Thank you. Now, another question is for any panelists here. Do you see a role for regional bodies like the East African Community to drive a common green corridor certification schemes? So any one of you can answer that.
I think I'll start. I think definitely there is. I think like I said before, one of the issues as a community we could drive is promoting railway transport for the benefit of modal shift from the road to the railway. Electric railway systems I'm talking about. As an East Africa community, can spearhead standardization of these ambitious ideas and initiatives within the corridor. But there could also be other standards for environment and sustainable green transport corridors within East Africa community that the community, as a community together, we could spearhead.
Thank you. What about Katie? What do you think? Because for Smart Freight Center, this is one of the main tasks for you. Do you think that regional bodies like East African Community, is necessary to drive a common corridor certification scheme in terms of certification, since you facilitate that?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, So, you mean certification of?
A common green corridor certification scheme for East African Community. Because you have the regulator mentioning positively on that, and you are facilitating it in Smart Freight Center.
So we support with the calculation of emissions. Now when it comes to carbon crediting, it would need a lot more, because now you'd have to seek for partnerships and people to actually come together so that you actually meet the levels of the emissions that are required to even get generate certain credits. So I think it requires a certain level of partnership and collaboration between the different actors in the space towards getting and accessing those carbon markets, the various carbon markets, either compliance or voluntary markets. But it does require a certain level of partnership. So maybe strive for MOUs between all the actors in the space so that they can agree to strive towards these markets. That's what I can say.
Okay, thank you. And from the area of a regional association, what do you think in this aspect? A regional certification scheme, a green certification scheme for region as operators.
I think, yeah, I think it is possible that the regional associations could take a lead. But again, I will hasten to add that they might be constrained by funds. So funds allowing, I'm sure the regional associations would be handy in taking lead in advancing this scheme.
I think. Okay, thank you. What about Ellie in terms of corridor transit?
Yes. Yeah, I think, as my colleagues said, the role of these regional bodies are paramount into the green certification. For instance, we are working with the Smart Freight Center and the Kune Foundation to develop the green freight strategy for the corridor. And through this strategy, it's easy to have the platform where all the member countries are aligning to the agreement to have the common understanding, and now we start the implementation at national levels become easy. So I'm in agreement that the need for the regional bodies is like the EIC, like the corridor management is paramount to ensure that we have the harmonized strategy and certification programs across the countries.
Yep, thank you, thank you. Okay, my next question deals with what specific infrastructure investments, whether it is railways, dry ports, or even border posts, have the highest potential to immediately boost trade access for East African land-linked countries? Yeah, any panelists? Yeah. Okay, let me repeat.
Yes.
What specific infrastructure investments, whether it's railways, dry ports, or border posts, have the highest potential to immediately boost trade access for East African land-linked countries?
For the East African land-linked countries, you are speaking of the countries where you have some areas which are very remotely. And so, speaking of which kind of infrastructure, I think you need to look at what the infrastructures that will support the efficient logistics to move goods and services. And of course, without underlying the role of cost effectiveness of the infrastructure as well as reliability. And in that case, railway has always been at the forefront of such transport infrastructure. And we have seen recently in the region the buy-in of most of the countries in terms of development of railway. For instance, we are speaking here in Tanzania currently, we are developing the standard gauge railway, but at the same time rehabilitating the meter gauge. And the same uptake, you could see it with the neighboring countries. For instance, as we are speaking, the Burundi is also in the process now to start the construction of the SPR connecting to the Tanzanian one. And at the same time, we are intending to reach to the remote areas in DRC, where as we speak, also feasibility studies are ongoing. So you could see the countries are already taking up the initiative for development of the railway infrastructure, given its potential reliability, but cost effectiveness in terms of movement of goods and services. However, you can't speak of the railway alone. You need to have connectivity to the market, access to the market. And that's where I think some other supporting infrastructure such as the dry ports, the inland ports also comes in. And we have also seen in countries, the Central Corridor member countries also coming up strongly onto this one. I think Tanzania is leading onto this one. If you look at a place called Kuala, Kuala is a place, I think 80 kilometers from the port of Dar es Salaam. The government of Tanzania has allocated, I think, a portion of plot for all the neighboring countries to ensure that they are developing the dry ports, so that they can facilitate ease movement of goods and services. So in terms of investment, yes, always the railway will come up first. But again, a huge amount of investment is needed into this infrastructure. And into this, that's when I think one of my colleagues talks about the need now to have other partners coming in to support the government in terms of investment. And we have seen this is working currently. For instance, the Secretariat of the Central Corridor is coordinating what we call the Lake Tanganyika Integrated Transport Program, where the government is putting up infrastructure to connect the railway from Port of Dar es Salaam to Kigoma, for instance, but also private sector coming up to build the vessels, to build the supporting infrastructure. So you see this joint effort on investment of infrastructure, I think is going to further unlock and reach the market within the land league, the states of the EAC.
Thank you. That's a very good answer. Yeah,
can I add to that?
Please. Yeah.
Just a little bit. What Mr. Kakomile was saying, it's very true. Railway systems is a way to go. All the countries have so far are going towards that because of all the benefits that there are. But there are two things I think as a community, as an East African community, we need to get on board with it, is how to incentivize a private sector to participate in the railway services. We have regulations, we have entry rules, but still it's not working. So what are the issues to put in place so that we can incentivize private sector to utilize railway systems more? There are also issues of human capacity gap. All across East Africa, and especially in the logistics, in the railways industry, they are not. Most professionals are going away. They are going out as far as demographics is concerned. So we need to involve young people, train more, put them into work, and digitize the system so that, you know, young people like digital systems. They don't like the things we used to do with papers and all. So we digitize, we incentivize them to join, and we can go. We can make it a sustainable venture going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'll touch on the human capital development shortly. I think one of the infrastructure perhaps not covered is soft infrastructure. Like for example, single window systems could be an important infrastructure. There is soft infrastructure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is very, very true, that the single window, the single customs territory, I think those are structures that can facilitate trade and to move faster. Because through experience, before single customs territory, to move cargo from Mombasa or from Dar es Salaam to Burundi or Kigali, you would need to make 4 or 5 entries, customs entries, and making any entry is money. But right now you make only one entry from the port to destination. So that one is a very big, very big save. You would need, each country would need its bond, but now you can use one bond to move cargo from here to destination. So I think you are right. If those were harmonized, then they would improve the business. They would simplify the process of doing business. Then one particular thing I wanted to note about infrastructure, and specifically railway development. SGR is a good project, a good initiative, but when you consider that the 2 or 3 countries that is supposed to be linked by one line are not harmonized in their development. I will give an example, God forbid, about the Naivasha SGR. I think the intention was good, but it was developed from Mombasa to Naivasha and stopped there. When I went there, it was in the middle of nowhere. How did they expect that cargo to reach Kampala? So it became a problem up to some time because the leg from Naivasha to Malawi had not been done, and for a long time. I'm sure it is being done now, but it has taken forever. So there is a need of harmonization of processes, harmonization of priorities, so that if you commit that as the EAC countries, we need a railway line from here to Kigali, let it be there. But if we do one part, it will not serve the purpose.
Thank you, thank you. That's a very realistic story, yeah? Real situation. I think it's a good point that will be recorded. Okay, I'm going to touch on the next part on the triple P, the public-private partnership. So my question is, how can public-private partnership be better structured to support the financing and the management of sustainable multimodal transport corridor? It's an open question. Yeah. Any panelists? How can the triple P be better structured to support financing and management of sustainable multimodal transport corridor? Now, this is an important question. So if the public-private sector can work together, the partnership well, it is a win for everyone, right? Isn't it? Yeah. So what do you think in your own perspective? Yeah, Katie.
I can start by giving an example of the work that we're doing on the Green Freight Support Program for Eastern Africa. It's a structure for private-public partnerships in the sense that we work with Kuna Foundation or the Kuna Climate Center that is technically a funder-grantor in this scenario, and us as Smart Freight Center have that technical expertise and the technical know-how, so that's what we bring to the table. And when it comes to the situation in East Africa, we work with organizations like Fiata, we work with the Central Corridor and other associations in the space to make sure that whatever activities that need to be done in this space are being completed. But we don't also work alone. We have other actors like the UNEP, TMA in East Africa as well. And that's a method of de-risking the investment. Since you're not the only one carrying the burden, it's spread across different partners, taking up certain elements of, say, the strategy, the Green Freight strategy for the Central Corridor. So you're sharing the risk, and that's what is beautiful about PPPs. You're not taking on the burden by yourself because you're not sure will it be a success. What are the KPIs tied to it? And what's interesting with the Green Freight Support Program is we're tying it to emissions as well. What is the carbon offsets that we're seeing for this? How many people are we training through the capacity building and the services that we're offering? So in that sense, PPPs is a beautiful way of working together so that the burden is not placed on one organization solely. And the companies that we support benefit greatly from it.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, please, Ali.
Maybe I would like to contribute into that, basically looking at the infrastructure project that could be how can be well structured to attract the PPP. And I think looking at the East African countries, we have very few infrastructure projects that are attracting PPP financing arrangement. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. But one of the major setback that we have been facing within the Secretariat of the Central Corridor, because sometimes we do assist our member countries to identify some projects and then preach them for instance, PPP financing, you find most of these are not attracting for the financing. And one of the main problems that we have been seeing, it is to do with the early project preparations of these projects, so that at the end of the day, they could make sense in terms of investment. And I think from after seeing this, we are working with some of our partners, including the GIZ, AUDA, NEPAD, now to assist our member countries in terms of early project preparations, such that some of these can be well packaged to attract PPP financing at a later stage.
Good recommendation. Driving a little bit deeper onto this PPP program, I'm just wondering, is there a current or historical model of risk-sharing framework frameworks between the public and private sector, the risk-sharing framework. Are the governments acceptable, or are they not prepared to do a risk-sharing kind of framework? Or is there any other framework pertaining to risk-sharing in this region?
I would say the governments are ready. I would say the governments are ready. And how do I know that they're ready? Because they've put up soft infrastructure in terms of laws to govern that, to govern working together with the private sector in several aspects. And I think there's still a work to be done to put in place things that actually from the paper to the ground. There are things to be done. Probably the private sector and the government need to hold serious discussions about these issues, put these issues together. The risk framework, it's inherently in the acts. It's inherently in the PPP Act, which has several models to work on. So each project has its own different model depending on its risk profile. And I think whenever it's there, the government can take it up. As far as the commitment in terms of the law, I think it's already there. Thank you.
To add into that, the governments are ready for this modality. And you could testify this through a number of, for instance, the first session in the morning talked of the port operations. For instance, the port of Dar es Salaam is currently, I think, operated under the private arrangement. So you could see that environment that have been put forward by the government to welcome in the private sector to run or to operate some of these key transport and logistic infrastructure. Not only in the ports, I think with Tanzania and even other member countries are following up. The railway development, as we said, is currently getting a huge buy-in in the country. But with that huge investment that have been put, countries are opening up and welcoming the private sector to operate within this infrastructure under the, I think they call it open access arrangement. So you could see the governments are ready, and maybe more work need to be done to structure these modalities to work better.
Thank you, Eli and Mr. Abdullah. Now, I think there's very good insights onto it. Now, we have GIZ here, and perhaps some other possible private equity funds or investors from elsewhere in the world who may be interested. Now, when I look at financing obstacles, my question is, what are some of the risks private investors are most concerned about when it comes to financing green multimodal projects, and how can government address these fears? What do you think? I mean, you have any clue about this, or any models that you have seen? Perhaps it's nice to share. Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting question. I think it's a very interesting question. I think our private sector is not big enough. Our private sector is not big enough. It's still grappling with financing. I think they need to be assured of government guarantees for a long time. We've had issues with BRT as well. It's a private sector working in Dar es Salaam. We are resolving some of the issues, but most of the issues relate to the commitment of the contracts themselves. How long are the commitments? How feasible are the commitments? How expensive is the financing? So these are the issues they should be taken care of. Also, of course, and I'm not talking about Tanzania in particular, but some of the countries in East Africa, there are also concerns about security. There are security issues, and they need to be resolved quick and permanently, so that private sector can trade with confidence, because these insecurity issues also attract costs. There are costs of insecurities. For example, going to Goma or going to Bukavu is inherently very expensive as going to Rwanda or going to Uganda, because of the sheer state of security. So these are the things, and when we are talking about infrastructure, investment, we are talking about multi-million dollar investment. We're not talking about buying a truck and if it's not working, you pack it back home. We are talking about a long-time kind of project. So here and there, some issues, conflict between countries. Some of them I wouldn't call conflict, but rather misunderstandings. A framework that can resolve issues quickly and sustainably. The private sector is also concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we started at 1600 hours just now, and the session is supposed to be 90 minutes, 1.5 hours. So we have consumed about only 1 hour. Yeah, I try to wrap up quickly. Okay, my last two questions. One deals with the human capital development, which I promised earlier. Now, what role do you think training, awareness, and capacity building initiative plays in enabling freight forwarders and logistics operators to adopt greener practices?
Yeah, training, capacity building, quality education, I think is the cornerstone. In that, if people are not aware, if people are not knowledgeable about what's happening, then they will not embrace whatever you are doing. So it is very fundamental that at the beginning of every project, you should sensitize. There would be stakeholders so that they own up the project. But if you just come because maybe you have money, or they will reject it and it will die. So you need to first convince these people, educate them. How do they participate? How do they benefit at the end of the day? And then I think you will be able to take off without any problem.
Thank you. Anyone like to act on this one? Yes, Mr. Abdullah.
I think that's also an interesting question. I think, in my perspective, and for I've done some studies in that area as well. We are talking about young people here. We are not talking about me and some of like the professor himself who can sit in a class and read a book from morning to evening. We are talking about young people who are fast. They want to learn, they want to get skills, they want to do something today, and they want to gain a remuneration for their work today. So with that, our training institutes are still thinking in before 2000 or 2K in classroom classes. I think what we should do, and educationists can help us, utilize technology to package the learning. Young people, they told us, they are more comfortable with their phones. They want to get everything from their phones. So we should get this knowledge and these skills through their phones. Package the education, chop it into small pieces and package it and throw it through their phones. They get these skills. I think we can make a revolution, but waiting for them to come to classroom, I think it's way back there. And these are the experiences they've been done elsewhere. Korea, South Korea is one of the examples. We are talking about 2008, they had these kind of challenges and they worked through it using educational technology, repackaging, making these animation videos for young people to learn, because we want them to take over the country sustainably, and we cannot leave them behind, and we cannot expect them to go back to school the way we used to go back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, very insightful. Now my last question, final one. Now looking ahead in 5 to 6 years time towards 2030, what are the top 3 priorities you believe East Africa must focus as to create truly sustainable multimodal corridors? We have discussed quite a number, but let's see your priorities, top 3. Yeah, what do you think? Katie,
yeah,
would you
sure.
like to start?
I can go ahead. So the first one needs to be capacity building, like we were talking about. I think sustainability is still new, and when just sustainability alone is new, but now we're talking about sustainable logistics. What does that look like? What does it entail? What is emissions accounting? How do you get into that carbon market? It's a new market. We don't just need to educate ourselves, but also our teams eco-driving as well, because we're talking about zero emission tracking. What does that look like? How does it affect your driver? So let's focus on capacitating. I think the second one would be focusing on more pilots, so scaling sustainable business models. How can we continue piloting such activities when it comes to infrastructure, coming up with charging spaces? How can we direct more financing towards independent power producers or even the local power producers to create more charging points so that zero emission tracking is not a thing of the future, but something that can happen now, and this can happen through scaling sustainable business models. Those are mine.
Thank you. What do you think your priorities for Ellie? Top 3 priorities?
I think I can mention one. My colleague Shah has mentioned some, but is to make the planning and implementation of the project and interventions that we are making in a corridor holistic approach rather than individual country approach. Thank you.
Thank you. And what about yourself? What do you think?
I think, like I had said earlier, there is a need for harmonization of projects by governments. For instance, in East Africa, they sit together, they agree this is what we are going to do, and they should do it.
And Mr. Abdullah?
I would say railway systems is railway infrastructure and services as a #1 priority, but the second one, digitization of the supply chain systems. I would put it #2, and a third one, okay, I would put it #2 too, human capacity development across the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just summarize our discussion as I've taken some notes as is spoken. We have covered quite a few rich insights. The first one, we explore on how climate smart road and rail infrastructure is not only mitigating climate risks, but also enhancing corridor resilience and operational reliability. The second one, we discuss the evolving role of freight forwarders, highlighting the operational challenges they face and the critical need for greener trade facilitation practices. Thirdly, we examine through Katie how data-driven digital solutions, from smart freight tracking to carbon measurement tools, that can drive efficiency and sustainability in multimodal corridors. Number 4, we recognize the vital role of policy frameworks and regulatory intervention in creating a more conducive environment for green logistics to thrive. Number 5, we emphasize the strategic infrastructure investment, both the hard and the soft, especially in dry ports, Ellie mentioned that, inland container depot or ICD, and last mile road and rail upgrades perhaps, to strengthen access for land-linked countries. Number 6, we also considered innovative financing models, particularly the importance of structuring the PPP, public-private partnership, that embed green standards and fair risk sharing. I asked a question on risk sharing. We highlighted the critical role of capacity building and skills development to ensure that freight forwarders and logistics service providers are empowered to lead the green transition. And finally, we look at the forward vision of 2030 with your priorities, focusing on digitalization, modal shift towards rail, and perhaps considering waterways, and a harmonized regional framework for sustainable trade corridors. Yeah. So those were the 8 main points that was discussed, and we had very good insights. Perhaps we can address 2 questions from the floor. Yes, please. We just have a few minutes, so 2 questions. Yeah, actually, we are still within the 90 minutes. Yeah. So can we have a microphone? Yeah.
Good afternoon to all. It's a very interesting, long and detailed discussion and panel you had. Sorry, let me go back one step. My name is Desiderio Fernandez, and I'm the current sitting president of the Pan-Africa Freight Forwarders Association. We are talking about green transport. We are talking about preferential movement of corridors or products from road to rail. But there's one issue which wasn't brought to the table. One of the pragmatic problems which has actually caused the movement of cargo from rail to road is actually the inefficiency and the increasing cost of railage movement. So we can have the corridor approach in terms of aligned programs, regional approach basis, but however, what has been put to the table or taken into consideration in order to reduce the railage cost to make it attractive to move the traffic from road back to rail, taking into consideration that the rail is already at a disadvantage in the sense that it cannot do a door-to-door delivery compared to a trucking movement. That's my one question for the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting and very pragmatic one. We can perhaps address to one of the panelists. I think infrastructure is one of the things, or whether robotics can solve the problem. Let's see what you say. Yeah.
Thank you. I think from our colleagues, under normal circumstances, the road mode of transport, for instance, comparing to the rail mode of transport, in terms of cost, it should be halfway. If I'm transporting 20 feet container all the way from Dar es Salaam, let's say to Uganda through Mwanza port, the cost of transporting this container by rail, of course, with a combination of the inland waterways, compared to the same cost of the container going through Mutukula border, it should be halfway. But I think from his perspective that the cost is higher. I think what we are missing here is still the supporting framework to ensure supporting framework and system to ensure that the railway transportation is efficient. For instance, currently, if I'm to transport a container by rail from here to Uganda, through Lake Victoria, what happens when this rail reaches at the shore of the lake? Is there transshipment process needed? And if that's the case, that means it is transporting into cost. Are there smooth movement, or do we have again to enter into other custom clearance process and all that? So supporting systems, I think this is one of the things that need to be looked at, and it is something doable. Because if you already have the hard infrastructures on the ground, these other supporting facilities like the systems is something which can be always discussed and deliberated and worked on. But again, it's something also which is adding up the cost of transporting by rail. It is to do with the last mile connectivity. With the truck, I'm able to move my container from Port of Dar es Salaam all the way to the doors of my industry. But with the rail transportation, somehow this is becoming a difficult and a challenging one. So if we can also work on terms of the last mile connectivity from where this railway are terminating, I think the realization of the rail mode of transport being cheaper compared to other modes, specifically rail, will come into reality. Thank you.
Thank you. That's insightful. Anything to add from one panelist before the last question? Anything to add pertaining to the question? Yeah, please, Mr. Abdullah. Yeah.
Okay, to add to that, the question is very interesting, and let me say, just complimenting Mr. Kakomile here, infrastructure is good, but when we have infrastructure in place, there's still work to be done. We need to have systems, like he said, but above all, we need to have digitized systems. A client needs to visibly see his cargo as it moves across the, they've told us this, they need to see their cargo moving across the rail from the origin to destination. Currently, that is not existing, and we are working with TRC, for starters, to ensure that we digitize every wagon and every locomotive. It has to be seen, and every cargo has to be seen to where from to the destination. Of course, when we are developing or we are moving or we are strategizing towards model shift to railway, we are not saying that the last mile, we are forgetting the last mile transshipment from the railway to the road. But for all the benefits of the environment, the benefit of economies, we'll still use the road as a last mile freight model. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Charles has something to add. The last.
Yeah, what I wanted to mention is that I think there should be a deliberate effort to categorize cargo. Which cargo is suitable for rail and which cargo is suitable for road. I'll give you an example. I have supermarket goods. I would hesitate putting them on rail. But if I have raw materials, bulk cargo, I will put it on rail. But to go back to your question, I think it has been an issue of management and service delivery. I don't know what happens, but the moment you put your cargo on rail, it never arrives. It never reaches where it is going. So people fear. They say, no, I would rather pay an extra shilling, but to go use the road. So I think we have a problem here to resolve about service delivery. How fast can I get my cargo?
Thank you. And final question. I see one participant raised his hand. Yeah, please give him the microphone. Introduce yourself and the organization, please.
My name is Captain Ibrahim Bendera. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not asking a new question. I'm trying to give you a better answer from the ones which they have given the panelists. If you don't know your history, you're going to forget yourself where you're going. East African Railways and Harbors was formed in 1948. And that is the railways which took cargo from Dar es Salaam to Kampala through its own ships, through its own railway. Now we have the Rotterdam Agreement, which have intermodal bill of lading. No country in East Africa has ratified that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing this thought. This is certainly very useful. All right. Now, we come to the end of our session. I would like to sincerely thank our distinguished speakers, panelists, for this valuable contribution, and all of you for your attentive participation. These discussions remind us that while the challenges are real, the opportunities are even greater if we commit to collaboration, innovation, and inclusive growth. Let us continue to collaborate to build sustainable, resilient, and efficient logistics ecosystems that will drive East Africa's growth for decades to come. On behalf of the organizers, I would sincerely thank all our 4 panelists and all of you for your engagement today. Let's continue to work together to create a greener and more connected East Africa. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of our conference tomorrow. Asante. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them another round of applause for a wonderful discussion.
Shall we take a picture together?
As we wind up day 1 of Fiata Rame Field Meeting 2025, I would like to personally congratulate Kenyans. There are so many Kenyans in the house. Where are you Kenyans? Wave your hands. Let's congratulate Kenyans for making it in the Fiata Rame 2025. Now, since there are many, I'll give them a chance to get a photo session after the panelists are done. Thank you so much. The Kenyans, please take the stage. Kenyans, where are you? I don't see you. Yay. To the stage. You want me to join as well? All right, after Kenyans, we are going to have the Ghanaians. I heard there's so many Ghanaians in the house. Can I see Ghanaians wave, please? Ghanaians in the house? Can we have Fiata leadership as well on the stage to take a picture with the Kenyans? Thank you, Majirani. Thank you so much. Ghana. Ghanaians, please, can you come on stage for a photo session? Any Ghanaians in the house? Meeting for us. Thank you so much. My name is Margaret Getty, your host for today.